What do you want from the United States? No, don't answer that. What's the big challenge facing Estonia, and what do you want from the Transatlantic community?
I don't think, I'm not actually going to talk about Estonia. I mean, I was quite liberal-minded and being typically Estonian, and I said, okay, look at what is the region. 2 weeks ago, about 2 weeks ago, one of the largest cases of insider trading in the United States, the U.S. District Attorney charged one of the richest men in the United States with a crime. Not new. I mean, this is the latest case of something really bad happening with some really rich guy doing something really bad. Well, one of the richest men was Rajaratnam, born in Colombo, Sri Lanka. This case should be a wake-up call for Wall Street, said Preet Bharara, District Attorney for the Southern District of New York, born in Punjab, India. This is a different America from the America that grew up, or that I grew up in, and that had Captive Nations Week, and where the foreign policy elite comprised of, the geniuses of US foreign policy comprised of refugees from Nazi Germany and refugees from communist oppression. Henry Kissinger, Zbigniew Brzezinski. So you had a foreign policy elite in the United States that was completely tuned into the subtlest nuances of what it was that we East Europeans were about. Well, Henry Kissinger and Zbigniew Brzezinski are now in their 80s. And who is the most well-known foreign policy commentator in the United States? Fareed Zakaria. Not someone from Eastern Europe. Not a refugee from Nazi Germany. Not a refugee from communist oppression. The world has changed. America has changed. Demographically, but much more importantly in terms of the issues it faces. And from an American point of view, to use the language that Ron uses and the State Department uses and the Republicans use just as much as Ron, we fixed that one. Eastern Europe is fixed. The to-do list has been checked off. Wall fallen, wall torn down, check. Warsaw Pact dismantled, check. Countries out of the Soviet orbit, check. Democratic, check. Market economies, check. And finally, icing on the cake, in NATO, check. In the EU, check. It's all done. We are not a problem anymore. Especially if you take an American problem-solving approach, this is a 100% success story. Where the world was in 1989 August, and compare it to 2009 October. I'm saying before the Hungarians decided to
Open up the gates.
Open up the barbed wire. Things have changed so dramatically. The problem, from the perspective of the Pentagon, from the perspective of Foggy Bottom, is that this is no longer a problem. It took 20 years. It is a fundamental, miraculous transformation. No different, actually, from the plan in the plan of the Marshall Plan, followed by NATO. That was another long-term project. It worked. So, in other words, the United States is no longer sensitive to the issues of the Central and East Europeans. It will make huge mistakes in pulling missiles out of, pulling out of the missile program on the day the Soviets invaded Poland, not because it's sold out to the Russians, but because it considers the region fixed, grown up, and there are no more neurotic people, desk officers, worrying about what everyone will think about it, because it's been solved. We are no longer Eastern Europe. We're just Europe over there. So, and especially if you're a country facing Iran, China, terrorism, we're fixed. We're done. The world has changed. The time between the fall of the wall and today is culturally as different as I know, I'll be done in a moment, as Tommy Dorsey and Jimmy Durante singing in 1945, and the Doors, Light My Fire, and the Jefferson Airplanes, Somebody to Love. 20 years. A huge cultural change. And I will end with this. I think that the Central Europeans and the Balts have to understand that we face a different challenge, a new challenge, a different America. We need to grow up. To quote Paul to the Corinthians, when I was a child, I spoke as a child, I understood as a child, I thought as a child. But when I became a man, I put away my childish things. Thank you.